The movie begins in a therapy center where Dr. Kligman sits across a boy named Max, whose face has been wrapped up with bandages. Kligman asks Max what the problem is. Max tells him that people somehow mysteriously die when they look at his face. He then narrates the details and flashes back to the time of his birth, where a doctor, along with some of the staff who were present at the time of his delivery, fainted and died just after looking at his face. After this match continues, his family decides to move out of the city, believing in the proposition less people, less mishaps, but nothing could help him. He tells Kling that he just wants to be a normal boy and live a normal life. Kligman says that the problem only seems to be in Max's head and urges him to take off his bandages. We are then taken to the waiting area outside where Max's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Richardson, are seated. A thud startles them and they rush inside to see the doctor lying dead on the ground in front of Max, who is hastily wrapping his face back up. Following this incident, the police arrive and warn Max's parents if more people die like this, they will have to put Max in prison. The couple assured the cops of such mishaps will not occur again. Meanwhile, a brick on the ground catches Max's attention and he keeps it with himself. That night, Max's friend Dan joins the family for dinner after learning that Dan has signed up on a dating site. Max's parents suggest Max do the same so he can make friends with more people his age. While Dan is alone with Max, later, Max gives Dan the brick and asks him to hit him in the face with it so his problem can end. Dan refuses to do this and tells him that due to Valentine's Day, Max has great chances of scoring a date, thus he should try. After seeing this, Dan gets immersed in his phone. Max tries to get his attention by slapping his phone and accidentally ends up throwing it on the ground. As a response, Dan hits him right on the face with the brick. The next day, Mrs. Richardson takes Max to another therapist. The people in the waiting area are staring at Max because of his wrapped up face. This irks his mother, and she immediately tells Max to hide his face with the magazine. Max goes to the magazine rack, but finds an empty. A girl called Alex is being played video games there. Alex gives Max her magazine, and the two have a brief conversation before Max is called into the doctor. Later, at home, Mrs. Richardson makes a call to complain about the malfunctioning heating system of her living room, but as soon as the person on the other end learns that she is Max's mother, he hangs up. Dan visits Max after this and tells him he's got a date for him. Max seems reluctant to go and falls under the floor and stress. Dan assures him that everything will be alright and take him to a restaurant, where he introduces him to a girl called Erica. It turns out Erica is repulsed by Max's bandages and has no interest whatsoever in their date to add insult to injury. The shy Max acts very awkward due to the newness of their experience. A moment later, a hooligan teenager called Craig starts a scene on another table and gets up to leave. While walking by Max and Erica's table, he recognizes Erica and sits beside her. He then looks at Max and realizes he's the guy who kills with his looks. This discussion regarding his face makes Max uncomfortable and he accidentally spills his drink. Craig gets enraged and starts wiping the table with Max's face. The manager comes and makes a security guard to take Craig out. Max asks Erica if she go on a date with him some other time, but she refuses and leaves. Unsettled and dejected by this event, Max decides to commit suicide. He goes to a high bridge and stands at the edge, holding himself back by the railing just as he's about to jump. Alex, the girl from the hospital, approaches him out of nowhere and asks him what he does up to. Max declares his intention and expresses his emotions. Alex offers Max some jelly beans, but when he refuses them, she dumps them in a water and remarked that he'll at least be jumping in a river full of jelly beans. Max tells her this used to be his dream. Once the two conversed for a while and Max decides against jumping. After that, Alex takes Max with her to a retirement home. She introduces him to a couple of elderly women called Esther and Rosemary. They all sit at a table where the women share their life experiences and tell the teens how their lives are so much easier than many. Alex walks Max to his house. Max asks if they can meet the next day, but but Alex apologizes to him for giving him the wrong impression and refuses to meet him. The next day, Max tells Dan about Alex while he's playing video games with them. Later, Dan tells him that he should retrace his steps and try to bump into her again. Later, Max used the words "you jump, I jump," spoken by Alex on a piece of cloth at home under a drawing of a bridge. The next morning, Max waits for Alex at her bus stop. Alex unfortunately arrives after her bus has already left. The alarm to Max tells her she just missed her bus, but as a response, she only stares at him and asks him if he's stalking her. Having no answer to her question, Max chooses to remain silent. A moment later, he asks Alex to spend a few more hours with him since she already missed her bus. Alex thinks for a while, then says yes and starts walking, and excited Max hurriedly follows her. The two visit a nearby market and buy numerous jelly beans. They fill up a bathtub with jelly beans and sit inside it as they talk. Max reveals the truth about his face to Alex, but to Max's surprise, she already knew. Alex also reveals that she has a rare heart condition due to which any kind of emotion, good or bad, affects her negatively. Afterwards, Max and Alex visit the theater and play a drinking game together. There, Alex tells Max that he's her first friend ever. They both enjoy each other's company and then go to Max's place. The two fool around in Max's room and Alex takes off his glasses to look at his eyes while he's staring into his aqua eyes. Max, his parents come home and get shocked and excited to find Alex there. They tell him from now on, "You shouldn't. An exchange student will be living with them. You shared." Turns out to be rather rude. She immediately goes to her room and slams the door shut. The next morning, Alex and Max visit Rosemary and Esther. Rosemary is sitting on a different table, eagerly awaiting someone. Esther tells them she's waiting for her son, who once used to bring her pies on her birthday, but doesn't visit anymore. It is revealed that Rosemary is 80's second birthday and she awaits for her son like every year. Rosemary later joins them and they play games. At dinner, Union is constantly on her phone. Mrs. Richardson asks you if she wants to make her something special for her to eat, but she only gets silence as a response. A moment later, the doorbell rings and Yu rushes to the door. She takes a pizza from the delivery guy outside and runs back inside without a word. Mrs. Richardson apologizes to the delivery guy and pays him. She then tells Max she must take you around the city to show her places. The next day, Max protests and say he's supposed to go camping with Dan and Alex, but Mrs. Richardson tells him to take you along. Then the following day, Dan, Max, Alex, and Yushin go out. You should leave them the venture on her own. Alex snaps a twig and gets wounded in the process. Max cuts off a piece of the bandages wrapped around his face and bandages her wound. Alex finds him and turns away. She notices that her electronic heart monitor has sensed the motions, which for her is bad news. At night while camping, Alex tells Max she wishes she could see his face. Max pulls the sheets over them and tells Alex to close your eyes. As she does, he unwraps his face and wraps the bandages around her eyes. He then lets her feel his face with her hands in the heat of the moment. Alex presses a kiss on Max's lips and immediately gets out and lays down to sleep as her heart could be heard thumping violently against her chest. Later, Dan and Max pull a Christmas tree out of Max's house and lay it outside. Dan gets splinters in his hands, thus he's rushed to the hospital. The two also find Alex there with her mother. Dan stops them and tries to introduce Max and himself, but Alex avoids them and tells her mother that they just work together and don't spend much time together. Later, Alex and Max meet outside by the road. Max asks why she said that to her mother, to which she explains her mother doesn't like the idea of her having friends, since feelings are bad for her. The two visit the retirement home after this. Esther greets them, but Rosemary seems to not be around. They ask about Rosemary saying they brought her pies, but Esther reveals Rosemary's health conditions have worsened. She takes a teenage daughter, Rosemary, who is now bedridden in critical situation. This situation upsets both Max and Alex greatly. Max and Alex share their problems and how people treat them oddly because of the rare conditions. Alex urges Max to show his face to Rosemary's so that she may die peacefully. Max argues, saying he does not want to do that, but at the end he agrees to do this with a heavy heart. Rosemary regains her consciousness when Max touches her hand. Max asks her if she would like to sleep. Rosemary blinks, her eyes indicating an affirmative response. Thus, Max unwraps his face. Rosemary looks at him and dies. Next, we're shown Max sitting with his mother at a table while his father works at a new game he's obsessed with. Yashin enters the house and goes upstairs without a word. Mrs. Richardson tries to ask her how she is, but as a response, Yashin only rudely kicks her back down the stairs. Mrs. Richardson asks Max how things are with him and Alex. He tells her that Alex has stopped responding to his text messages. That she is confused, Mrs. Richardson then complains about Mr. Resistant's new obsession, which she finds displeasing, to which the father says there's nothing wrong with wanting to enjoy his free time. The already stressed Max yells at his parents for always arguing and leaves. The next day, Dan and Max hang out at a restaurant. Dan tells Max to invite Alex to a dance party at his school, but Max seems reluctant. Dan texts Alex on Max's behalf and asks her out to the dance. Alex began to type out, but then gives no response. Max later goes to Alex's house to see her. He notices that her heart monitor is glowing red, an indication that her heart has gotten bigger due to feelings. The two end up arguing. Max tells Alex that it was wrong of her not to tell him what was going on with her, but Alex states that there is no quick fix to her problem. She can't live like a prisoner. Alex then tells Max that she's been put on strong medications that will prevent her condition from worsening, and she says she wants to go to the dance with Max. Next, we're shown Max all dressed up for the dance. He goes down the stairs without his bandages, but his parents immediately cover Alex's eyes and send him back in. He apologizes and rushes back inside for the bandages. He returns a moment later after wearing them and approaches Alex. Alex gives Max a dog mask and a horn as a gift, saying they're for their costumes. The two reach the party and start dancing together. Slow music starts playing soon and the couple start dancing. Max and Alex initially hesitate when Max asks Alex for her hand. They start slow dancing closely as well. The proximity makes Alex's heart throb. She excuses herself, saying she's getting sick and walks away as soon as her nose starts to bleed. After Alex leaves, Dan joins Max with his date called Valencia. Craig also comes towards them and tries to talk to Valencia, but she tells him off, saying she's with Daniel. Craig realizes that Max is under the dog mask and grabs him by the neck, holding him with his face towards Valencia. Craig pulls off Max's mask. To his horror, Valencia dies after having one look at his face. The police come and arrest Max. After some investigation, they let Max out of prison right after they release him from jail. Max visits Alex at the hospital to ask her about her health and her current situation. There, Max comes to know that Alex lied to him. She was never on medication, and every time he made her feel a certain way, her heart grew worse and worse. Alex tells Max that her life expectancy was just 16 years due to avoiding feelings and friends. She's been able to live up to 17 years, but she feels empty. Max, she says, was the only milestone in her life, the only person whose company she ever enjoyed. She says she can't get better and expresses her wish to see Max's face, but he straight up refuses, saying it's not easy to watch someone die and that her death will constantly haunt him in the future. He tells her he can't grant her wish and leaves at his house. Max's mother is worried at home and worried. Parents are shown talking to the police over the phone, asking where their son is since they hadn't heard back since he's been arrested. A stressed Max enters his house and starts violently hitting his face with a brick to disfigure his legally attractive face. His parents stop him and calm him down. Max takes off his face, rapping in frustration and sorrow. The cat appears before him and dies on the spot. Next, Max is seen in a bathtub filled with jelly beans. Throughout the day, Max ignores Alex's texts and calls. The next day, Dan goes to bid Valencia goodbye at her memorial. Max joins him there, and they both talk about Valencia and Alex. Dan gets cross after learning that Max is ignoring Alex when she is in such a critical condition at the hospital and tells him not to be a dick. Max argues that his problems are bigger, to which Dan explains that his stubbornness will only deprive him of the chance to say goodbye. After a while, Max visits Alex and decorates her wall with self-made crafts. He then apologizes to Alex for not being there for her and lays down next to her. He tells her that it is really hard for him to say goodbye to her. They talk for a while, and then Alex again asks to see Max's face. Max tells Alex to close her eyes. As she does, he unwraps his face and lays next to her. Alex turns towards him and takes off her oxygen mask. She tells Max she's scared, to which he says she doesn't have to do this, with her eyes still. Alex kisses Max and opens her eyes. However, seeing him does not kill her and she keeps staring. Suddenly, her monitors start beeping loudly. Max hurriedly wraps his face again and calls for the doctors. Next, Max is seen lying beside Alex's bed as he goes down the memory lane and recalls all the good memories with Alex. We're then brought back to the present, where Alex's bed is now empty and the wall no longer holds the crafts made for her. Max leaves the hospital in pain and walks to this church, where he stands beside Alex's coffin. Max then goes to the bridge. He puts a jelly bean flyer in an envelope with Alex's name on it and drops it into the river, letting it sink. Next, we're shown Max at a doctor's clinic. The doctor asks him how he feels on a scale from 1 to 10, to which he replies he feels like a 5. The doctor tells Max that that is wonderful improvement, indicating he'd been much worse before and is healing. The doctor asks him what changed, to which he explained that the case over Valencia finally got settled. Serotonin overdose was declared the cause of death, which seemed natural, so all the cases against both Max and Craig were dropped. The case made Max popular, and sometimes people ask him for his help to put the ones in pain out of their misery. Max still visits Astor. He says, he explains that Alex taught him, when someone loves you unconditionally, your face isn't the most attractive to them. Your personality is thus. Those who love him can't be killed by him. His parents have also gotten closer and worked things out between them. The doctor asks him what's next, to which he says he now wants to live without the wrappings. With this, the movie ends. Thanks for watching, guys.